Thank you for joining us on Let's Get Political. As always, I am Alicia Reese, your host, and today we have State Representative Spencer Roach with us answering 13 questions. Thank you for taking the time. First question, who is your best friend at the Capitol?
I have a lot of people at the Capitol that I admire and a lot of friends. I would say, some of the people that I admire greatly are the clerk, Jeff Takas, and the Sergeant Russell Hosford. Those folks are great. And Clerk Takas' knowledge of the history of the Capitol is certainly astounding. And one of the best compliments I ever got in this process was when Rep. John Snyder referred to me as the historian of the Florida House, because I love the history of the chamber, of the House, and of the folks that came before us and helped shape the state and pave the way for what we do now. But best friend in the Capitol, my two of my best friends are no longer serving. That would be Brett Haig, who was a rep with me for 2 terms, and then Rep. Juan Fernandez-Barquin, who was my seatmate in the chamber. We sat right beside each other for almost the entire 5 years that he was here. He left to be the clerk down in South Florida, and he was just up here this week. That's probably my best friend in the Florida House is Juan Fernandez-Barquin. So Juan, if you're watching this, hello. He was up here just yesterday. We went and got some pizza at Isabella's over on Gaines Street. So check that out too.
Who is your best friend from across the aisle?
My best friend from across the aisle, I would have to say my absolute BFF from across the aisle is my girl, Angie Nixon. We get along great, have so much in common, and she loves all of the bills that I run, although she won't publicly admit that. She has to oppose them for political reasons. I understand it. I love you, Angie. Thank you. Well, look, I would probably have to say, it's hard to name one. I've got a lot of people that I really like over there. One thing we're proud of here in the Florida House is that we're not DC. Believe it or not, we are very collegial with folks across the aisle. Look, I really enjoy engaging in a battle of wits with Anna Eskamani. She's incredibly collegial, funny, smart as a whip. I love chatting with her. David Silvers is who we call, his honorary nickname is Chairman of the Bourbon Caucus. And I'll leave you for obvious reasons to find out why that may be his chairmanship here in the Florida House. But a great guy, great friend of mine. Working closely with Hillary Cassell on a couple of issues. I've really gotten to know her better and admire her. She's a good friend. And look, there are a couple of folks that have really been good to me when I was having some rough personal moments. Kelly Skidmore, Kristen Arrington, and Christine Hunchowski. I was here when my appendix ruptured on a plane last year. They visited me when I was ill, brought me some comfort food and some blankets and really took care of me. And then Christine Hunchowski drove all the way across the state when my home got damaged by Hurricane Ian to bring me some hot coffee and some socks, at ground zero in the hurricane zone there. So I will never forget that kindness that my friends on the other side of the aisle shown me when I really needed it. And, it kind of exposes the humanity of that place and those times we can put aside our partisanship and our political differences and just be friends.
What do you do when you aren't in Tallahassee and when you are in Tallahassee but not at the Capitol?
The big lie about this job is that it is a part-time job. It's really, as we like to joke around here, a full-time job with part-time pay. So even when I'm not in the Capitol, I'm a state representative all the time back home serving our constituents. Things that I like to do when I have the time, I'm a huge travel junkie. Just this last year, I spent almost a full month in Spain and Portugal, traveling around, exploring that part of Europe. Anytime I can get on a plane and get down to South and Central America and do some scuba diving, big fan of blue clear water, white sand, blue skies, and clear water, and red wine too. I like that as well. But yeah, I like to travel. I'm a voracious reader. I love to read. In fact, this is a fun fact to know about me. I'm the only state rep, maybe the only politician, period, that has published their own reading list. So if you were to go to Spencer Roach for Statehouse, that's for FOR, statehouse.com, you can see my reading list there that we started during COVID when people were kind of locked in their homes. And I had thought maybe people were Netflixed out at that point, but I put together a list of books every week that we published by email of books that I think people should read and why. And I did my own little critical analysis of the books. The feedback we got, we were getting replies and forwards all over the country. And that email did so well that we memorialized it permanently on my website. So, when I was in high school, I wanted to be an author. That was my life's ambition. And who knows, maybe I'll still sit down one day and write the great American novel. But love to read, love talking about books, love discussing books. So that's something I like to do.
What's your favorite bill that you put forth last year?
Wow, so many. So I think one of the fun bills that I worked on was a drone bill that I worked on with Rep. Wyman Duggan, another good friend of mine in the process, to expand the ability for companies to offer drone deliveries in the state of Florida. I think it's a look at the future. Right now, we have last count. I think we have 7 retailers in Florida that are actually right now delivering products by drone. And I think you can expect that service to expand around the state soon. And that expansion is going to bring with it a host of other, unforeseeable problems and challenges that we're going to have to deal with. But, I think it's fascinating that you look back at the legislature 100 years ago and you think about those old black and white photos of people you see around the Capitol. They never would have imagined that we'd be debating in the House floor a bill to allow an unmanned aircraft to deliver things to your door within 20 minutes. And I think for the future legislators, 100 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised if they're debating teleportation or something other crazy idea that we can't even possibly fathom right now. So that was a fun bill.
What's a bill that someone else put forth that you're passionate about?
So I'm really passionate about a bill that Linda Cheney put forth this year. It's House Bill 49. It's getting a reputation as a controversial bill. I don't think it's that controversial, but what it does is it expands opportunities for young people, 16, 17-year-olds, to get into the workforce and get their first job. And I'm a big believer and proponent of doing everything we can to incentivize and encourage young folks to learn those soft skills on the job that they really can't learn any other way and they're not learning at school. And that also gives them that first step on what I would call the ladder of economic opportunity and mobility, to start climbing that ladder. But I'm constantly, dismayed by the number of young people I talk to. Some of them are well into their 20s that have never had a job before. And I actually feel sorry for them because there's so much that they're not learning, and they're so far behind their peers that they got to enter the workforce at a much earlier age and learn those soft skills that they'll need for the rest of their lives, no matter what they're doing. And I loved it. I loved working, and I loved my first job. I had some great friends that I still have today, learned some valuable skills, and was able to put money in my pocket as a 15-year-old kid. So I didn't have to ask my parents for money. I could go do some things. And, for a guy at that age, it's very simple, right? You want a job so you can get a car. You want a car so you can get a girlfriend. Like, that's how it works, at least back when I was in high school. So that was a motivating factor there.
Do you live in your district?
Yes. In fact, in the state of Florida, we are required to live in our district. So yes, I live in North Fort Myers, which now, since the district has changed, is actually at the southern end of my district. Before the district changed, it was smack dab in the middle of my house district. So yeah, I live in North Fort Myers.
You're running for re-election. Sum up your campaign in one word.
Focused. We're focused on working for my constituents. And we have a district-centered representation, meaning that what's important to me and my team are what's happening back home in our district, not necessarily the things that are important to folks here in Tallahassee. But I would say focused on the people at home that I work for.
If you win re-election, how do you realistically see Florida in the next 2 years?
Wow, I think I could talk for an hour about that. So, Florida is now the 3rd largest state in the nation. And I think it may actually be the 2nd largest state in the nation at some point in the not too distant future. But Florida is growing. I mean, we have about 1,000 people a day, every single day, moving to the state of Florida. So that's great for Florida's economy. But it does present some challenges in terms of staying ahead of the infrastructure needs. And that has been a challenge in Florida for 50 plus years. So, when I think about the future of Florida, I think the challenges that we're going to have to work with are, diversifying our economy outside of the traditional 3-legged stool of our economy, which is, agriculture, tourism, and real estate and construction. So I think that one thing that we learned from COVID, and we learned from these market retractions that we have every couple of years, is the need to diversify our economy and focus on bringing jobs to Florida that are not in one of those 3 sectors, so that in times of market retraction, we can have another segment of our economy to sustain us. But look, I think the challenges of the next 2 years, infrastructure, continuing to ensure we have conditions for a robust economy if we enter an economic downturn, which I fear is coming, and then protecting our natural environment for future Floridians. But how I see Florida in the next 2 years, it's how it's always been: crazy Florida man stories. This is Florida. So you can expect the unexpected. You can expect the crazy, the deranged, the unthinkable. If it can happen, it will happen in Florida.
What's something about the Capitol that a lot of people don't know, a secret spot or a little known fact?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of the House Chamber and the history of the House Chamber. And I would say, the murals that hang on the walls of the House Chamber were done by a gentleman from Pinellas County named Christopher Steele. You should absolutely explore these murals when you're up here and get a tour. But the level of detail is fascinating. So there's a picture in the House Chamber. It's on the back right side of the chamber of a big manatee, and it's called the Spring of Life is the name of this mural. And one fun fact, if you were to go to this picture, take your iPhone and zoom into the manatee's eye, Christopher Steele painted a reflection of the chamber in the manatee's eye, and it's so small and detailed that he used a brush with only 3 bristles on it. But you have to zoom in on your iPhone, and you can see the reflection of the speaker's rostrum in the eye of that manatee. The level of detail is so incredible. That's just one of the fun facts about the House Chamber, but I'd encourage you to go check that out if you come up here to the Capitol and get a tour of the House Chamber and see that in the manatee's eye yourself. It's really cool.
What's a misconception people have about your job?
So I think one very common misconception is that this job is synonymous with being a member of Congress. So we serve at the state level in the state legislature, and people assume that I can't tell you how many times people ask me, when are you going back to DC? Well, we don't work in DC. We work in the capital of the state of Florida, which of course is Tallahassee. And then people assume that our salary is the same as a member of Congress. A member of Congress makes $174,000 a year. A state house rep makes $29,000 a year before taxes. So again, the big joke up here is that it's a full-time job with part-time pay. So this is a part-time legislature, unlike Congress. That's one of the very, very common misconceptions that you run into with the general public. A lot of times it's not worth the effort to correct someone, especially if you're doing an interview. I mean, I even had Laura Ingraham from Fox News call me congressman on air doing a national broadcast. And of course, I didn't correct her because it would have interrupted the flow of the interview. But that's a common mistake. People refer to us as congressman or as a state rep. They'll call you senator. And another misconception, I would say, is people will refer frequently to the governor as our boss. And look, I love the governor, but nothing will irritate a legislator quicker than when you refer to the governor as their boss, because we have a strict, separate but equal branches, both in the U.S. government and at the state level. So people get a little prickly because we do believe in that separation of legislative branches, separation of powers. And so the legislature is designed to act as a check on executive power and vice versa. But it would be the equivalent is if you approach the governor and refer to Speaker Renner or Senate President Kathleen Passidomo as his boss. You would probably see some hackles go up there. And that's how we feel too when people say, they refer to the governor and say, well, your boss did this or your boss did that. My boss is not the governor. And my boss is in fact not even the Speaker of the Florida House, who represents all of the members. My boss are my constituents back home, the 184,000 people in House District 76 that I represent. That's my boss. That's who I work for.
If you weren't a state representative, what would you do?
So another fun fact about this chamber, most of the people that serve here do have a day job, right? You can't possibly sustain yourself or support a family on the $29,000 a year that you make working as a part-time state employee. So many people do in fact have other jobs. By trade, I'm a retired Coast Guard officer. So I retired from the Coast Guard in 2016. Right now, I guess you could kind of say I'm in between jobs there. But if I were not in elected office, what would I be doing? I mentioned that I'm a big fan of travel, and it's been my lifelong dream to live at least for several years as an expat and maybe have, and this is serious. People will think I'm kidding, but I'm really not, to have, run a little beach bar / dive shop down in Central or South America, maybe somewhere like Belize. If you were asking me where I would be, what I would be doing if I weren't in politics, maybe I'd be doing something like that. And maybe one day you'll see me at some beach bar in Belize, slinging drinks and renting out dive equipment or something. So look for me there if this political thing doesn't work out.
What's a fun fact about your job that people don't know?
So a fun fact that the general public may not know is that when we're in the House chamber in session, on our desk are 3 buttons. There's a green button that you push when you are voting in support of a bill, And there's a red button that you vote. It's a no vote when you are not in support of a bill. And there's a third button on the desk. The third button simply says page on it, but I like to refer to that as the snack button. So fun fact is that while we're on the House floor, we have kind of an army of elementary and middle school kids that are sitting behind the chamber that come up for 1 week and serve basically at the pleasure of the members. And their sole job is when you hit that button, they will come to your desk and say, Representative Roach, what would you like me to bring you? And we have a huge sort of cavern in the back of the house off the floor that's filled with snacks. And you can say, hey, I would like a root beer and a packet of Skittles, or I would like, a Snickers bar and a Coke or a cup of coffee. And they will go back there and magically produce this junk food for you. It's why I may have gained a few pounds since I've gotten elected. But imagine having a job where you could push a button from your desk and have someone bring you a snack of your choice as often as you wanted it. So that's the fun fact, is that we have literally a snack button at our desk in the House chamber.
What does your perfect day include?
Perfect day here at the Capitol? So a perfect day would include being able to come to the Capitol anytime later than 10 a.m. while they're still serving breakfast, to have some great coffee and breakfast at my leisure. And really, this would be a perfect day. A perfect day in this place would be everyone that you're supposed to meet with shows up to your office to meet with you, and no one who's not on your calendar or has not asked for a meeting doesn't just pop randomly into your office requesting a meeting and taking up your time. That would be a perfect day. That day has never happened. That day will never happen. There's no other job in the world that is full of dysfunction and misfunction like this job, where you have probably 3,000 bills that you're expected to read every session, and that you vote on many of them, not all of them. But your day can be haphazardly interrupted at any moment by anyone who wants to walk into your office and talk to you about any given topic under the sun. That is at the same time very frustrating, but very amusing, because there are no 2 days that are the same. There is no routine in this place. Anything can happen at any time. And because, as I said, it's Florida, probably will. I mean, you think about some of the things that happened last year. We had people literally throwing their underwear at us from the gallery of the House chamber. That's not something you would see on your average job. So you never know what may happen in any given day around this place. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much for taking the time to answer these questions. Thank you.
Is that all? That's it? Oh man, we're just getting warmed up.